Hello, friends. Welcome back to Great People Interview Series. I'm so glad to invite and welcome Peter Rogers, who is the Managing Director of Bait Studio in Cardiff, who is from, the most glamorous industry, which is TV and films. So I'm so glad to say that this is a unique dimension to our series. We had no person, no speaker from this industry. So I'm really excited to know, what we can do and what Peter has done and get inspired by that. So without much delay, welcome, Peter.
Hi there. How are you doing?
Great. So you into visual effects and motion design for TV and films. Just tell a little bit more about that. What is your business and what exactly you do there?
Sure. Yeah, the business is called Bait Studio. We're based in Cardiff in South Wales. I've been with the company for 10 years, and I think the company's been going for about 15, maybe slightly longer. Predominantly doing visual effects. So sometimes the sort of CG things that you will know of from big feature films, but other times we do a lot of invisible effects. So a lot of drama programs will have effects in them that you hopefully should never notice are there. And we also, so that's the work on that side of things. And then on the motion design side, we do things like title sequences, again for shows. But we also do sort of graphics and maps and things that you might, if you're watching a documentary and there's suddenly pops a map to show you where the journey's going, and things like that. We do those as well. We've got two teams basically, the motion design team and a visual effects team, both kind of reporting into me.
Fantastic. Well, you have a very interesting journey. You spent 10 years in radio, and you've done lots of different roles. You've gone from being a manager to managing the whole show, which is managing director, and then you turned again and you changed companies. So tell us about your backstory and your journey.
So I did a business education degree, which means I studied business as a sandwich course. I did sort of 2 years studying business and then 2 years teacher training. So I went out into schools, went out into colleges. I didn't really know what I wanted to do at the time. Thought I wanted to teach, realized quite quickly I didn't want to teach. But having said that, we studied things like child psychology, we studied things like organizational behavior, and getting the experience of standing in front of 30 kids or 15 students and actually teaching them, I think really helped me in terms of confidence as a person. But also if you've gone into your first lesson in a comprehensive school, you're pretty much ready for anything in business, I would say, almost. And I think off the back of that, I've done quite a lot of public speaking at events and things like that, which other people can be quite nervous about, but I'm pretty comfortable about that because, say, once you've kind of, it wasn't an expected benefit, but gave me some really good transferable skills of being able to stand in front of a group of people and explain something. So I did that degree. Then I went to Rain Dance, which is a film school in London, and I did directing, producing, and writing courses. And then ended up in radio as a copywriter, so using those writing skills to write commercials. Did that for a little while at my first radio station, then moved to a second larger station in Cardiff, where I'm based now. And then off the back of that, I became a creative director / regional manager. So I moved to Newcastle up in the northeast of England, which was a big step, and managed a team in North Wales, Manchester, and Newcastle and Glasgow. So I covered that territory for about a year, mainly kind of coaching and developing other creatives. So I'd been somebody who had written commercials, but you also used to run your own mini department. You'd have a budget to look after, you'd have a revenue target to hit, and you'd have to manage your costs. So I got used to that kind of thing, and then it got taken onto a bigger scale with those kind of 5 radio stations, I think it was. And then a year later, the same job came up back in a different area in the southwest. So I got that job, moved back to Cardiff, and then managed people across 12 radio stations from Plymouth down in the southwest, down in Devon, all the way over to Reading, not that far outside of London. So
Oh, that's
I spent,
massive.
yeah, it was a big area. So I spent about 2.5 years, most of the time in my car, driving to each radio
I can
station.
imagine 12
Yeah.
radio stations across, the territory.
I
It's
could have
massive.
done with things like Zoom back then, because you'd be emailing people, but you wouldn't, or picking up the phone, or you'd try. What we used to do is once a quarter we'd get everyone together in person. That used to be really helpful. But yeah, so managing a team across 12 sites, again, say coaching, mentoring, looking at the quality of their work, and also kind of helping them grow their revenue for the radio stations was my role there. After that, I went for the big job, which was head of creative for the whole of the UK. When my boss left, didn't quite go down to the last 3, but didn't actually get that job. And then I think off the back of that, they were a bit like, well, this guy's had quite a quick rise through the company. So what do we do with him now? And then one of the radio stations actually needed a managing director, which was Seven Sound in Gloucestershire. Went for that role and got that role. And then that was a total shift. So I was managing one creative at the site. So that's what I was used to doing, but I was also managing, then I inherited then a sales team of 6. And also,
so was it you rebranded that as Hearts?
Yes, that's right. So yeah, so it was an interesting time. I went in to a radio station that was losing money and that had a planned rebrand because a new group had bought it.
Yeah.
So it was I was thrown in the deep end, but it was one of the smaller stations. So I guess bringing somebody in from the creative side of the business was a little bit lower risk. But yeah, I kind of went in and did things in my own kind of unique fashion. Tried to get everyone working closely as a team, tried to sort of change how we did things in the marketplace, and I managed to turn the revenue position around so that we were making
fantastic
good money by the time that I left there. And then, as often happens with companies, they restructure, things change, they centralize a lot of things after the Heart rebrand. And when they did that, I was unfortunately tasked with putting the whole radio station at risk of redundancy, including myself, which was interesting. I don't think they expected me to leave because we were doing really well. But again, I went for a regional job, which would have been across more stations, which I wasn't really sure I wanted. And it went to someone with far more experience than me, because at the time I was only kind of in my early 30s. And they were like, oh, but if you stay, you stay, eventually that job could be yours. And I sort of looked in the mirror and I thought, I don't know if this is actually what I want to do. I think what I really liked was managing small teams and building things up. But I kind of done that. I felt like I'd done the job I needed to do at that radio station. The success had happened. So I was like, well, what do you do now? Just like carry on doing the same thing, and I get quite easily bored. And then I thought, well, there's this future job that will be the same thing, but I'm not really sure I want it. And it was a big company that had its kind of own ways of doing things. So in the end, I took voluntary redundancy, which was a big step. Long conversations with my wife about whether it was the right thing to do after 10 years, and having gone from a copywriter to managing director in that 10 years. And then decided, I'll take voluntary redundancy, back myself to find something else, and then went and got a job with one of our clients at the time, actually, who had an animation and visual effects studio in it, and basically offered myself to, look, can you create a role for me doing business development, and I'll help you grow the business. They said yes, and then managed to do that. And then a couple of years later, moved back to Cardiff, which is where we preferred to live, and moved to another studio under similar circumstances, really. Approached somebody that I knew and sort of said, look, these are the things I can do. I think I can help grow your business. Can you create a role for me? And they kind of did. And it was a good timing, because it was a visual effects company and a motion design company had just kind of joined forces and were doing things. They were on a big production. So when I came in, it was like, right, I'll grow the business, but also look at how you run things and what you do. And I tried to take some of that, right, well, you need systems in place. You need a way of tracking what you're doing, but you also need a way of kind of just motivating a small team, and try and bring that kind of stuff through. I say initially as business development, and then a few years later we expanded into animation and also interactive sort of web design and app development and games. And that meant that my boss had a lot more on his plate. So it was like, well, I can't really manage all of this. So, well, you're kind of managing the motion design and visual effects stuff anyway. Why don't you take more responsibility there. That happened, and then eventually we split the company in two, which is when I became managing director, which I think was in 2019. Yeah, and so since then I've been running the motion design and visual effects teams. Yeah.
Wow, fantastic. So tell us, some interesting projects you might have worked on.
The most interesting recent project I think was Heartstopper, which is a Netflix series that came out earlier this year. Was in the top 10 worldwide.
Yeah.
We worked on that, and there's a second and third series of that in the works. We worked on a film called Dream Horse, which starred Damian Lewis and Toni Collette, that came out during the pandemic, which wasn't ideal when cinemas were closed, but it has now been out. We've also worked on a film called Apostle for Netflix, which is working with Gareth Evans, who's the director of the Raid films. Yeah, so we started in kind of children's TV and Welsh language television, so we had to kind of grow the business by trying to get slightly bigger projects, by doing them at a lower price because people didn't know who we were. And then over time, we kind of built our reputation as things have gone on, to work on larger projects. We're currently working on a film, I can't say what it is, but it's working with a very well-known director that people would have heard of, which is probably the biggest project we've ever worked on. So
Amazing.
over the kind of years, we've kind of gone on to bigger and better projects as the company's grown.
Amazing. So why this name, Bait Studio?
That is a very good question, and I'm not 100% sure of the answer. So originally there were two companies, and the original one was called Bait, and our creative director Paul Nicholas. But it's a bit like I think it's in the Dark Knight film when they asked that, like, the Joker's backstory is different every time he tells a different person. It's quite similar to that. So I think it's kind of the visual bait to lure the eyeball. So it's a bit like bait that you'd have like for fishing, but instead of fishing bait, it's more a visual bait. So it draws you in. And our logo is kind of based on a little bit on that, but also on a pinching a pixel as well. So it's kind of a play on that. There's a few different ways it can be interpreted.
No doubt, you're in a creative industry, so the name has to be very creative and thought through. So, with that, you've done a lot of this business development and so on. So my natural question is, what has worked over the years for you to attract new customers and to retain new customers?
I think finding new customers is one of the hardest things to do. Retaining customers, I don't think is difficult. I think they're two very different challenges. If I'm ever mentoring somebody, I'll always say, getting the first job with someone is hard. Getting the second job with someone is easy, because just do the first job well. To be honest, build a relationship, build a rapport, be a good communicator, collaborate well, deliver the project on time and on budget. If you do all of those things, you'll usually get a second job. So, for example, the Eros, who's the director of Heartstopper, is also the director of Dream Horse, which we did before that. He's also the director of Kiri, which we did before that. So you build relationships. And also the good thing about our industry, if you get a job, there's a director, there's a producer, there's a line producer, there's a post-production supervisor. If you get on well with all those people and do a good job, they'll all go off and do other jobs. So I almost see every job we get could potentially give us 4 more avenues of relationships. And I think the most important thing is relationship building. I think as well, when you're first in business development, and I was certainly guilty of this, you go out, you just try and grab everything. There's somebody who needs something, we'll do it. And you almost, and that, what I've learned over the years, that isn't the right thing to do. You want to go, okay, what defines us as a business? What do we want to achieve? What are our goals? Yes, we've got to hit our revenue. We've got to get our numbers in, but you don't want to take on a job that's going to run over, that's going to cost, not going to make money, that's going to demotivate the team, that's not going to. So we try and look at, okay, these days we're in a fortunate position now as the industry has changed, that we're more picking and choosing jobs than just hunting them out. So it's also, okay, would this be something we'd put on a showreel? Is something we'd be proud to have worked on? Is it going to make us decent revenue? And are we going to enjoy it? And then you almost want to try and you're not going to get all three, but you would like to get at least all two. Whereas I think originally just the revenue would have been my only focus, but that's quite a short-term view. So I think there's an element of compatibility with clients. Not every company is the right fit for every client, because what we do, we're not making something that's sat on a shelf for you to buy. We're working with you to create something to meet a brief. So there's also an element of, we may not want a second job with somebody because maybe that relationship just doesn't quite work. And I think that's the biggest thing I've learned, is that I guess it is called business development for a reason. You're developing your business. It's not just sales. There's a lot more nuance than that. So I think in some ways, a lot of the times a client will research the company they're going to use, but I think the company should be researching the client just as much. Maybe speaking to other people about how working with them has gone, because it isn't a transactional business. It's like a consultative business. And you are working together. And sometimes you're on a project for 6 months or a year. And if you don't get on, that's a long time. So I think I would say in everything, the one thing I've kept with me through all the jobs I've had is that relationships are key. And if you build strong relationships, then that's what will drive the business forward.
Yeah, that's a brilliant insight. I think, when people are looking for business, well, they just take on anything and everything. And then maybe they're not good at all that they have taken, which means they won't get the second chance. They'll, create themselves stress because they're not able to deliver. They understand that they can't deliver. And then they create strain in that relation. Probably, there is very low referenceability with that customer. So you're spoiling the whole show. So I think, very good takeaway there for the audience. As much as, the clients are researching you, you should be researching whether you are the right fit for your customers. Well, you don't always have that luxury because you need business as well. So you somewhere have to balance.
Yeah. And I think it's just knowing, like, sometimes you go, okay, I'm only taking this job because it's a bit of money to keep us going for this month. But as long as you know that's why you're doing it, if you try and pretend it's something that it isn't, it's going to get worse. You go, okay, we're doing this, we'll get it through, we'll get it done, we'll move on. I think that's a different thing. When I first got the managing director's job at the radio station, I did a presentation for the whole radio, for all the staff, to kind of introduce myself. And it based on a philosophy of understand, under promise, over deliver, which is what I stand by. So to work with a client, you've got to understand what they need. You should always under promise. So don't go out of your way. And that's where people get it wrong first time. So I really need a business. I'm not going to get it. I know. I'll say we can do anything. And I've worked for people that will promise people the earth. Yeah, we can do anything. It's absolutely fine. We'll do that. Yeah. And then afterwards you go, how can you do that? And they go, I've got no idea. And you're like,
yeah,
but what if it goes wrong? And so there's a little bit, I guess I'm an optimistic pessimist, if that makes any sense. So I'll be like, okay, I'd rather find out the information. What I'd like clients to go is, oh, wow. I'd rather say to someone, we can do 75% of something and then end up doing it all.
Yeah.
So they go, oh, that's brilliant. You've done all these extra things for us. Then say we can do 100% straight away and then actually can't do it. I'd much rather, it's all about, say, relationship magic. I'd like someone to come away from a project with us going, I really enjoyed working with them. They made our life easier. They made our project go well. And look at all these things they did for us.
Yeah.
Rather than haggling with somebody or arguing with somebody over extra bits at the end of a project, because that's where the stress comes in. And that's the bit where once you're at the point of a deadline, you're all under the immense pressure, including the production itself. And if you're trying to work things out, then that's when the relationship will start to break apart.
Yeah.
Whereas if in the first place, you set your stall out early, you under promise, but you always try and do those little bits of extra. That's, for me, that's how we've won business across all the industries I've been in.
In IT industry, where I come from, and spent many years, we have these salespeople going out and saying, well, you want this software? Okay, we can do it. We can do it in almost no time. And then, oh, you want any changes? Don't worry, we'll just do it. But the problem is, instead you say, no, there is going to be a change request process where we analyze if it is a smaller change. Smaller change means what? It takes a day or two. That's a smaller change. We'll do it. If it is more, then we'll have to go through a proposal process. And so right at the start, customer is absolutely clear that these people are going to follow some processes, and depending upon the kind of work we throw at them, they're going to respond to it. So they're aware, and you promise them, okay, these are the stages in our software delivery cycle, so it's going to take 4 months. And what you can do as a company, you could put multiple people, you can do parallel working and ensure that 4 months is actually done in 3.5 months, and you make the customer happy. It's all about setting expectations, isn't it?
It is, yeah, very much so. Because if you're not clear, everyone's got their own way of looking at things. Everyone's got their own way of interpreting things. So if you make things, and I think someone's go, oh, if we keep it really woolly, then we've got a bit more control. But if you keep it really woolly, nobody knows what's happening. I think you're right. And there'll be times when you go, yeah, it needs a change order. We need to put a new line in the budget for that. There are other times you go, oh, do you know what? It's going really well. You've given us feedback really quickly. The relationship's going well. You haven't given us too many changes along the way. We'll just do that one. And that's the stuff that those little things are the things that help build that relationship. But it's not basing your business on added value. It's added value when it's deserved in a way, or when the project needs it. And you've got to be able to make those decisions, because otherwise you're going to burn out your team by trying to do loads of extra things for people.
Good point.
And also, if you overpromise, it doesn't allow for changes in the business. It doesn't allow for other jobs that come in. It doesn't allow for people being ill or anything like that. It just means you've already kind of, especially with a small team, and there are companies that do this, they build their whole business model on stretch. Everything's on stretching the resources, stretching the hours, stretching everything. But if you stretch something enough, eventually it will break. So that's not, and that's, again, as a small business that isn't in London, a lot of our philosophy's got to be about things like work-life balance, things like people's mental health. And you don't get the benefit from your team if you're working them into the ground. You've got to find ways to let them switch off so that you get the most out of them, and they've got enough energy to do the work, and they're still enthused and motivated to do it. Otherwise, you might as well just train AI to do everything.
Yeah, so true. So you had these various jobs that you did. You raised from being a copywriter to being a managing director in just a span of 10 years. Fantastic journey, and you made us feel it's so easy, but I know it is never that easy. You said in a such a fluent way that it feels as if you have been sailing through no issues. So I want to know, what was your biggest challenge, and how did you overcome that challenge?
Gosh, I guess there's probably been multiple. I guess the move from being a creative to running a radio station was a big shift. And I had to and also there were people that knew me from that, and I was kind of pigeonholed as being one thing, and I had to kind of reinvent myself a little bit. So that was a challenge. Taking redundancy and changing industries was a big challenge. That was a massive risk. I used to have a brilliant boss, a guy called Steve Jones, when I worked in radio as my regional manager. And his thing was like, just always back yourself. Always, he said, if you want to get on in life and in a career, back yourself. Is if you don't, nobody else is going to back you. So I thought, you know what, I'll believe in myself enough that I'll go for the MD's job. I'll believe in myself enough that I can take redundancy and find another job. I'll believe in myself enough that I can persuade somebody to make a role for me because I think that I can add value to their business. But having said all of that, the biggest challenge really has probably been the pandemic, because we were in a good place. We're starting to win bigger projects. I can remember standing up in front of the team and saying, right, it looks like we're going to have to work from home for about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. But so we just got to get all the equipment ready. And then we've got, being able to speak to each other on Teams and get video calls and stuff. So, but, that shouldn't be a problem. And in a few weeks' time, we'll all be back in the office. And then years went by.
Yeah.
And the first challenge was, I think the bigger studios had like maybe projects that were lasting a year, so they weren't immediately impacted. Because we're a smaller company, we were moving in kind of 2 or 3 month cycles.
Yeah.
So it only took a couple of months of 2020 for the work to completely dry up. So we had people furloughed. At one point, it was down to just me and our creative director, the only people working.
Oh.
But you're trying to keep in contact with your team, keep them engaged with the business while there is no work going on. So that was the biggest challenge, I think. And then how we've come out of it, I guess, was continuing to communicate, always talking to people, talking through, being very honest about the situation, talking about what the guidelines were in terms of COVID. And then as we started to win work back, it kind of shifted. As soon as we won one job, that led to the next job. And we've been, I have to say, the company is probably in a better place now than it was pre-pandemic, because the one benefit of your business, you don't want your business to pause.
Yeah.
But the one benefit of your business pausing is you've got time to think about the business, because we're all so busy we're never really doing enough on strategy or doing enough on structure. So what it did do is make you go, right, okay, well, the world is changing. What does that mean in terms of recruitment? What does it mean in terms of how we win business? What does it mean? Like, we used to win a lot of work because it was filmed in Cardiff. A lot of filming goes on. Now the majority of stuff we work on isn't necessarily filmed locally, because the world has changed, and it makes you, a challenge like that makes you think, well, you've got to adapt, and you almost stop being on that kind of conveyor belt of the same thing all the time. It makes you take a little bit of a step back and go, right, okay, what can we do differently? And we are looking at some ways to restructure the business, some brand work in the background, which I don't think would have necessarily happened without the pandemic. So although it's been a very negative time and not nice for people, and the social interaction has been lost, we're coming out of it. We've got more work, more stuff. We've been able to recruit more people after the pandemic, or after the peak of the pandemic. And we've got people working back in the office, got new juniors coming through. And I'm really excited again about where the business can go. So it's kind of, you almost need to hit that rock bottom to then springboard you into kind of a new way of looking at things, I think.
Excellent. Hi there. I just wanted to share with you all why London School of Digital Business is doing this Great People interview series. Well, for the last few years, small and medium businesses have been facing lots of challenges. Individuals have been wondering what's going to happen to their careers because of these emerging trends and technologies, artificial intelligence, VR, AR. What's going to happen? It feels as if the world is changing. And then COVID hit, and there is a lot of depression in the minds of people. So we thought we need to bring in some positivity, bring in some motivation and inspiration. And it's all good to know these stories of, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates. But we wanted to talk about the extraordinary stories of the people that you get to see in the ordinary world. They are no way ordinary people. They are great people, but they are the ones you can relate to. Hence, we thought this is something that we want to bring in to increase the chances of success for many, motivate them, give them the insights. And I'm so happy to share that every leader has shared completely unique and different insights, because their situations have been different. Somebody was alone, and we know that entrepreneurs are alone at the top and how it feels, and they fought their challenges. Somebody had partnership, business partners, and somebody could not survive the business partnership, so they had to rebuild themselves. Somebody thought, well, I could have done this differently if I was to go back in time. So every insight is so unique. I must thank all the people who shared their journeys, and I'm sure this will help you all succeed in life, increase the chances of your success, as well as reach there faster, and of course, achieve happiness in life. Thank you for listening. All right. So, we had enough talk on business, and it's probably time to go to our next section where we want to know Peter Rogers as a person. So, tell us more about your family and,
I think so.
especially your strongman competitions.
Yeah, sure. It's a strange one. I'm the youngest of three children. I grew up in Dorset, which is a very rural area in the south of England. So grew up right out in the country, and wanted to be a stuntman when I was a little kid. All the way through primary school, I desperately wanted to be a stuntman, and then years later, wanted to write feature films. And now, so working in the industry now is great. Live in Cardiff, myself and my wife, and I've got a teenage daughter, so there's three of us living in the house.
Wow. Now. Amazing. Going to the last part of the interview, which is most interesting and something for people to take away. In the conclusion, tell us what's your ultimate goal and vision.
That's a good question. So I guess in life, I like inspiring people. That's one of the things I like about my job, but also telling good stories. So I write myself, so it's telling my own stories, but also in this job, you're helping other people to tell their stories, which is something that I would say is my kind of purpose in life overall. And then my work goal, I guess, is just to grow the business, to work on bigger projects, and to make a name for the studio so people kind of recognize who we are and what we do.
Oh, brilliant. So good luck with that. And we had lots of advices throughout this conversation. So thank you very much for your time. And I'm sure the audience is going to find this very useful.
No problem. I didn't actually talk about strongman competitions at all then, did I?
Sorry?
I said I didn't even mention the strongman, sorry.
Yeah. Please tell me.
So this has happened. This was a pandemic thing, really. So at the start of the pandemic, I thought, right, I'm going to be stuck in the house, not moving very much. I can see the fridge, I can see the food, I can see the beer. This isn't going to be very good. So I was like, okay, I'll buy some weights to start keeping myself active. Started to go for walks every day, get a bit more active. And then I got myself a personal trainer, and he got me quite fit. And then I started so I used to watch World's Strongest Man growing up. And then found out that the UK Strongest Man was based about 10 miles from where I live. So when things reopened, my wife got me a birthday present to go and train with him. I knew nothing really about it apart from what I'd seen on TV and on YouTube and stuff. Went and trained with him, and he said, "Oh, you could try this." And I'm like, "Well, no, I didn't realize it's like anything, I suppose. Not everybody is Lionel Messi. Not everyone's playing in the Premier League." And you realize I used to play Saturday and Sunday league football, and it's not the same level. But with something like strongman, you just assume that it's just these like 7-foot huge guys like Thor and Eddie Hall. But the reality is you can do it at a lower level. So I then found myself a coach, an online coach that I work with. And despite being 48, I've suddenly taken up a new sport. And I've competed in 3 competitions this year. Just did my 3rd one at the weekend.
Wow.
And just it's amazing community. It's just you meet all sorts of different people. And what I like about it, in most sports, if you're competing against somebody, your rivals, you don't like each other. The amazing thing about strongman, which totally fits with my philosophy for life, my philosophy for work, is that you all support each other. You don't want to win because someone else has done badly. You want to win because you've all done your best. And that's what I love about it. The community, people will help you with equipment. They'll give you tips on how to do something, even though you're competing against each other. And it's amazing. And I think, again, as a thing for like mental health and stuff, I think it's a really positive thing, particularly for men who maybe don't talk about stuff and maybe don't just doing something together, doing something sociable, but also, I certainly find it a release. I'm maybe one of the few times I don't think about work is if I've got a very large weight above my head, because you can't really, because at that point you've got to focus on what you're doing.
That's a brilliant way to switch off. Amazing. You made me laugh. Uh, thank you so much for your time, Peter.
Yeah, no problem. All right,
I
thank
think it
you.
was an amazing interview. Have a great day ahead.
No problem. And you.
All right.
Take
Thanks.
care. Bye bye.
Bye.